Well, good afternoon, everybody. Well, the people who want to watch how to fish still waters, with me is a very, very dear and old friend, Steve Cullen. We've edited magazines together, we've done all sorts of stuff, but he's become a really fabulous all-round fisher in the truest sense, from freestone rivers to still waters, large or small. And he's going to take you through a number of styles, a number of really, really beneficial tactics that will help you, I'm sure, in all sorts of areas of your fly fishing, and show you an awful lot of the product from Vision and other products from Guide Fly Fishing, I think.
Possibly. We'll see.
But to help things along, Jonathan, over to you, and I can go and have a cup of tea.
Another cup of tea.
Another
cup of tea. Thank you very
Good
much,
luck,
Charles.
Thanks, Charles. Lovely introduction. I'll see if I can live up to that.
Right, so you can see it's changed again from the conditions we had earlier. We've had some nice cloud coming in and out and quite a few buzzers coming off. Steve set himself up with 3 different outfits. So if you just want to speak, talk us through what you've got, Steve, and how you're going to approach it.
Yeah, so basically, Jonathan, I've got 3 Stillmaniac outfits with me today. We'll be introducing another one later on this year, but just now we've got this particular one's a 9 foot 9 inch 6 weight. And it's a lot more delicate than its bigger brothers, which is more suited to bank fishing on windy days or even boat fishing, This one's just a little bit more delicate, and the reason it's so delicate is I'm going to be fishing really, really thin tippet. So this is 3 pound supple flex. So the diameter of that's probably about 0.12 or 0.14, so extremely thin. And not the usual stuff that you see people fishing in a small still water. However, it's very, very calm. We're on the sort of lee side of the wind, all the wind's over that side, but you're seeing fish popping and they're taking tiny stuff. So I've went really small, my tippet's thin, and the reason it's so thin is because I'm fishing a size 18 fly, and that's going to represent a midge on the point of hatching. And I've just got a little bit of gink on the top of that foam there, so the whole fly, hopefully, will sit just subsurface.
Just cock.
Just cock perfect, like a shuttlecock buzzer, buddy, you got it. Just like fishing rutland, but obviously for these fish. Now everybody thinks that stocky rainbows are easy to catch. I can assure you, the first thing I'm going to do is put my glasses on. I can assure you, stocky rainbows are the hardest to catch. They're the most finickiest of fish. So my plan with this is, and there's a particular way of fishing it, I'm just going to watch the water and I'll have enough line off. You'll also see I've got a very, very long leader. And I've basically tapered that myself. You can use a shop bought taper leader. This one's Fluoroflex, 12 pound, tapering down to an 8 pound Fluoroflex, then 7 pound, then the supple flex on the end. And the reason for that is I never brought my tapered leaders.
Overall length on that, Steve?
That's probably about, I think, 18 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say about 18.
About 18 feet. And the reason for that, Jonathan, because it's so clear. So we're on, just for everybody at home, we're on day 2 of a show. So we've had a lot of videos on this particular lake. We've had a lot of people fishing it. And I'm guessing, well, having seen the calibre of anglers on it, they've been very, very good. My plan is to try and winkle out some of these fish that have probably been caught before. And I think the only way I can do that is by presenting them with something that looks like food. Rather than pulling a lure or suspending nymphs, because the water's so clear, I'm going to go really, really small. And one of the things when you're still water fishing, most of your guys that you'll see that will rock up at a still water, they come straight to the bank, they'll haul off 20 yards of line and then they cast it as far as they possibly can. They've basically spooked everything in this area. My plan with this bit is I'm going to look for rising fish, and the key for me is seeing which way they're rising. If I see a fish and I haven't seen which way it's rising, I won't even cast at it. I need to know which way it's rising before I put the fly in front of it. Because it's so clear, I can put that up to 5 feet in front of that fish and it should find it.
Yep.
That's the plan anyway. And with this rod, this particular Stillmaniac, it's super, super delicate. It's a lot, so the bigger rods, which we'll talk about in a second, they're a lot beefier. Great for fishing into wind, great for fishing off the boat, and bank fishing in general. So these rods were designed by very well-known competition anglers specifically for this market. But this particular one is phenomenal for this kind of presentation on small still waters. I also need to say, as a little caveat, it's a really good streamer rod on rivers, some of the bigger rivers that we've got.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Now, I'm trying to talk and cover up some of the silence here, but all the time I'm watching for fish moving.
I was just about to say that. You're
know?
like me, you're constantly moving back and forth.
But I've got a line on here. This particular line's the Real Perception, and its sensitivity is awesome, and it's great for turning out. It's a lighter presentation than most lines. A lot of modern fly lines are quite heavy in the front taper. When you're fishing calm stuff like this, if you've got a heavy tapered fly line hitting that, you're spooking everything.
I'm a big fan of the Perception. It's also got a very positive turnover, so it always wants to give you that better presentation as well.
It really is phenomenal. I found it an absolute godsend for dry fly fishing. And believe it or not, I fish a lot at the back end with large floating fry patterns, but by building your taper correctly on your leader, it makes such a big difference. And you can turn it over even with like a fly line like this. You didn't need this big heavy front profile on a fly line. And it's typical, I'll just turn it to the camera and just say this, it's pretty typical. So when we were getting set up here, there was 1 or 2 fish popping. And as we were getting set up, it was cloudy, the suns came out. And when that sun comes out in that clear water, it makes things a little bit tricky.
Yeah, we've had plenty of times, and literally within 30 seconds of the clouds coming over, you just see it pop, 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 and within 30 seconds of the cloud disappearing,
They're gone.
Gone.
They are gone. Now a lot of people say, and you'll hear this all the time, oh it's sunny, you're going to struggle to catch. If there's enough food on the surface, you're going to catch. It doesn't matter how sunny it is, I promise you. If there's enough food to keep those fish there, they'll be on it all the time.
Yeah, we're very fortunate here. It's a water where they're always looking up. They're very happy to feed
It's
off the
amazing.
surface, so.
And I'm guessing, look at the bottom. If you have a look at the bottom, guys, I'm sure you can pick it up on the camera. The clarity of water is nothing short of exceptional. I mean, it really is ridiculously clear. I can probably see out from the banking before the sun hits the water, I can probably see out 30 feet, and I can see every little leaf and twig on the bottom. So any fish that's cruising close to the margins, and trust me, a lot of these fish are close to the margins, they're going to see me. But the other thing when you look at the bottom is the amount of build up of silt, and the key thing with silt is chiromonoids, or to you and I, buzzers.
Absolute hotbed for it.
Yeah, total hotbed for buzzers. It's funny because nowadays, more so than ever in the past, I can remember, and Jonathan, you'll remember, because you used to fish there quite a lot with your team stuff. On Rutland Water, we used to get huge hatches of sedge, but the water quality is such now that those sedge hatches are gone. So most of our fishing these days is centred around the buzzer. That's it. And unfortunately for me, right now, none of these fish are feeding on buzzers. But what we're doing is we're keeping an eye on the cloud cover. And I'm having a wee look. Yeah, and it's definitely coming. The other thing worth mentioning, the reason I've went with this method first is we mentioned the fact that walking down to a lake and bumming out a cast as far as you possibly can. This is a delicate method. It's the least aggressive method that you can fish. I'm hardly casting, I'm using a very delicate line over clear water with a very, very long tippet. I'm not pulling flies through loads of fish, I'm not spooking everything in the area. My movements, my whole stance and position on the lake's very calm and considered.
We have got a few flies hatching off.
Oh, look at that. So that's a little lake olive by the looks of things.
Absolute beauty, just...
And it could be that that's what they're taking.
I thought I saw one over there, either that or it was a very large buzzer hatching off, but it turns out I think that's what it was.
My entomology is no fantastic, it's either a lake or a pond olive, and there is a difference, definitely.
Mr. Proctor would tell you.
Yep.
That's good to see though.
Yeah, that's really good. And it just shows you how warm it is.
Well, we've just seen our first daddy longlegs coming off today.
You're joking me.
The 10th of April.
It just shows you what can you stay at this, not this country, but everywhere in general.
Fly hatching, I mean, it was only, we were just talking about this earlier with Charge, 2019, so year pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Leading up to getting ready for our proper show before we had to go virtual.
Yeah.
It was the 14th of April, and here at this lake we had damsels, daddies and mayflies hatching.
In April.
On the 14th of April.
It's astounding really, isn't it? You would never get that in the past.
Oh,
you just wouldn't get
crazy.
it. And I think that's another thing that we need to touch on is the fact that many of our still waters, large and small, they're affected as well by this global warming. We're on about fly hatches early on in the year. But as a consequence to that, we lose the fly hatches later on in the year because the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water is shocking. There is, oh that was me, Sorry guys, that was me moving my fly. We've got set up here and we've literally not seen a single fish move. Anyway, back to what I was saying about the whole global warming thing. What I would say is make the most of your still water fisheries through the winter and the spring months.
Absolutely.
And then again into the autumn. Because it's not so much that you won't catch, but because of the lack of oxygen in the water in the summer, it's very rare for the fish to feed. They'll feed last thing at night and they'll feed first thing in the morning. But through the day, a lot of those fish are disappearing. And as a consequence, what we don't get anymore is, we used to get a lot of wintered fish. Again, that's down to stocking policies and triploids, rainbows, rather than sexed fish. But as a consequence, the big rainbows that we used to see years ago in the reservoirs, you didn't see them anymore, unfortunately. When you were fishing the likes of Rutland, and you were fishing a match, you were getting boys specifically targeting the big fish up the arms.
Disappear down the arms and go, you know, rather than hit the main basin,
You
try and get a dozen in an hour.
You got it.
Right, I'll get 5 down the south in the full day, but they'll all be 4 to 6 pounds.
That's exactly it.
You know, and you were trying to pick out those better quality fish to beat the guy that had 12 at £2 or 12 at £1.14.
That had bagged up too quick.
Yep. And you thought, well, for every one you've got, that's 3, nearly 4 of their fish.
Exactly.
I'd rather settle and take the.
No.
Now, I would say, judging by that rise formation,
He's taking something
that
off.
just took an olive.
Yeah, he's splashy. So that's a splashy rise. And when we were getting set up here, we never seen a single splashy rise. The rises we seen were sips, just tiny little noses breaking the surface. That's a fish that's came up. And because it's an olive gets so much time on the top of the water. And if it gets a little bit of breeze, it's off. So the fish will make a rash decision and say, right, quickly, I need to get that fly. Very similar to what you'll get at the start of a hatch on a river. Very similar fly, actually, to LDO.
Very similar indeed.
We're praying for this sun.
It just scouted round the outside of the sun there.
Unbelievable.
We were just thinking that we might get some cloud cover. But no, it's an interesting thing with the fly hatches and particularly, you know, the way seasons are working. We have great fishing here when we reopen sort of end of September, October, but we tend to have that 6 to 12 week period in the summer where we can be off the end of that platform, we can be 20 plus degrees on the bottom.
Wow.
You know, and it's easier just to not be open because anglers come, they can't catch the fish because the fish aren't feeding. They'll complain to you. The easiest thing to do, just take that break, let the fishery recover, and then when it comes back, you know, particularly through the winter, it's great fishing. Water's at its best quality. Fish fight like stink.
They do.
And then once you're getting into sort of late March, early April, and the flies start coming, you get a little bit warmer weather like now. Those fish are you know, they're hungry. And they'll switch on these nymphs and they're hatching adults really well. You get some great evening and well, on an overcast day, some great daytime dry fishing.
Well, we've seen it when we came here, didn't we? The amount of fish that were moving. There really was a phenomenal amount of fish, particularly in this bay. A little bit further out, but there was a few closer in. So I'm going to persevere with this because I think it's probably the best way of catching the fish before I spook everything. I can see another lake olive on the water right there. And we're constantly looking up at the sun, waiting for a little bit of cover. There's another fish, another splashier rise, just to my right, maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 yards. But what I don't want to do is go tanking up and down the banking. I want to stay where I am, because the fish will be cruising. There's a marginal shelf out there where the water drops on. I'm expecting the majority of the fish to be on the shelf. It's a key spot.
Particularly here, they do. You'll watch them coming left to right and then back again. And they're just at about that range of about 30, 35 feet just as it drops.
It's worth mentioning actually, because everybody, I mentioned it at the start, of people come shooting out and they cast the line as far as possible. The key, fish love structure, and we talk about structure all the time, whether it be river fishing, whether it be saltwater fishing, or whether it be fly fishing in a still water such as this. They're looking for structure. Now the main structure in every single small still water is the banking. It's a constant, it's always there. Fish will hug the margins, and you quite often see it. People say, oh, the fish won't come in at the shallows. Quite often when you walk down to a lake such as this, as soon as you get near the banking, you're spooking stuff from the sides. So fish will come into really, really shallow water to feed. Didn't be put off by shallow water, because they will come in there to feed. You must fish this lake, Jonathan.
Not as often as I'd like, but I love it because it's, you know, it's stuffed with natural flies. You know, we've got because the actual bottom itself,
Yeah.
it's a hotbed for buzzer. So you've got good bloodworm, buzzer, you've got great caddis, you've got mayfly, because of course it's a bit silty.
Yes.
Being close to the kennet, you always get that crossover of a really good hatch from there. They'll
Brilliant.
come and they'll
Yeah.
lay in here. We've got the little hosier bed next to us as well. We've got good pond olives. We've got an exceptionally good damsel.
I just seen a fish move there. Sorry, I never
It's
seen it
all right.
move. I seen it. There he goes. He just went right under my fly. I actually seen him. We talked about the water clarity.
Yeah,
I seen the
watching
fish move. Sorry, Jonathan.
It's
You
all
were
right.
saying.
Exceptionally good damsel.
Yeah.
We get quite a prolonged blue damsel hatch, but throughout the whole year they are walloping
Here.
them, absolutely walloping them. You know, from being right at the start of their life cycle to just before they're about to hatch as an adult. This water is stuff. I mean, if you jumped in and did a dip, you'd see just how much is in here, and you've got snails and various other things as well. So it is, as far as a fish goes, it's one big larder.
Yeah.
There's so much food in here, and if you like floating lines, midge tips, nymphing, dry fly fishing,
Which we do.
it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. You know,
Which everybody does.
you'll still catch on the old pulling. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you know, if you like a more relaxed day, a more imitative, natural fishing day,
Yeah.
it's a fabulous water for that.
Yeah. It's funny, you mentioned damsels. I've got another rod set up there where an intermediate. I think probably one of the best flies for rainbows the world over, and it is the world over, I promise you, is a damsel.
Absolutely.
It's just phenomenally good
Absolutely.
fly.
I mean, I
but
think-
tied like a damsel, you know? It is still a lure, but tied to look like a
I think
damsel.
if you probably asked the likes of Fulling Mill, I think their biggest selling fly would be
It
a blue
is.
flash damsel.
Yeah, it is.
I think there's barely a customer comes through that door who picks up a dozen flies that doesn't take at least one damsel pattern away with them.
Because they know how effective it is.
Absolutely.
We're getting a tiny, incy wet, but you probably notice, guys, and if you're watching this at home, if you are any kind of fly fisher, you'll know that I'm really sort of biting my tongue here. I'm having to sit on my hands and be really, really calm. My temptation is, because we're doing a live video, is to go out and start fishing. However, I honestly believe if I do start fishing, I'm going to spook the fish. We can talk about the rods later, but ideally we want to show you a method that you probably don't see that often. It's not often that you see guys fish with such a fine tippet and such small flies in a still water, but I actually promise you it can be ridiculously good. When they're up, it's funny, I fished a competition, I want to say January. Now bear in mind this is January, I think it was January or February at Tough Newton. And the boy that won it's one of my friends. This is one of his flies. And he fished two of these tiny flies in a big wind, standing up the banking and just flicking his flies in the side. And what was happening is everybody was casting to the horizon. And like I said to you before, the one constant in a still water, any still water, is the bank. And the fish were cruising a foot to 2 feet off the drop off on the banking. And that's what he was doing, that's how he was catching them.
Been a while since I've been up there.
It's nice actually, it's new people that have got it now and it fishes really well.
Well, and Andy Hudson and I, we
I can
fished.
remember.
Yeah, we fished together as
I can remember.
youngsters.
I can remember 100 years ago he did a feature with a blue booby.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was on Toff.
It was on Toft.
There you go.
Blue booby with yellow eyes.
I might not remember much stuff, but when it comes to fishing, I remember everything.
God, that's got to be 20 years ago at least.
Right, guys, I think what I'm going to do is, I've got another method there.
And I don't think we're going to get the cloud. It seems
I
to be
don't think we're
skirting
going
around.
to get, however, I do think we will still get fish. And if I have this rod sort of close by, I can always pick it up and target one. But I've got another method there that's quite unobtrusive. And I've got it on the bigger rod, so I can talk you through the bigger rod. But you can just see how delicate that is on a flat cam. And believe it or not, this is a 7-weight line that I've got on this. And the reason I've got that is just to ping it out a little bit further. But you can see how supple and how soft everything lands in the water. And the delicate presentation I get with a 6-weight is far superior to that what I get with a 7-weight. It's like chalk and cheese. And when it comes to playing fish, the enjoyment that you get for something like this sort of softer 9'9" 6-weight rod is remarkable. Compared to a 7-weight rod, trust me, it's chalk and cheese.
That looks very much like another dun that's just been
I was
taken.
going to say, it looks like they're taking winged flies rather than midges. So the other method I've got, and I'll pick up another rod and show you, is it's a lot more, it's aggressive, but it's still a subtle method. When you're fishing a small water like this, if you can keep your least aggressive methods, which is usually pulling lures, to the very last thing, The fish will stay in the vicinity because you're not splashing and pulling your flies all the time. So that was the 9'9" for a 6, but I'll come back to that and we'll go through some of its key features as well. But ideally we want to try and catch a fish for you.
It's an interesting length, 9'9" for a 6.
It's a strange one, and everybody says, what's the benefit?
But I remember again 20 odd years ago, there was a 9'3" and 9'9" were suddenly coming out. And actually, I think ultimately, I was talking to him years ago about somebody with from a casting aspect.
Yeah.
And that actually your perfect length was sort of 9'9".
Yeah.
Just being long enough, but not too
long. But nobody
long,
could get them then.
No.
Back then it was 9'6" everybody.
Yeah, 9'6" or 10 foot,
yeah.
and that was it. But yeah, I mean, certainly we're seeing more and more people using a 9'6" for a 6, or 9'9" for a 6. As there's a few different models available, but they've been very. Oh, here
we've got one tiny little bit of cloud cover, and the fish has just moved there.
Literally, it's about, if you looked up in the sky, it's like the size of an apple.
So the reason, and I'll just come to that, the reason for the 9'9" as opposed to the 9'6" has got that little bit more leverage when it comes to your back cast. Quite often with the smaller still waters, any still waters really, there's usually some kind of obstruction, and it's usually waist height. So if you've got that, it doesn't seem a lot 3 inches, but trust me, I'll have to watch what I'm saying here because it's very close. But yeah, that extra 3 inches makes a whole host of difference. But what it also does is, unlike a shorter rod, when you're fishing a small still water that's got a shelf, a really steep shelf, is you can hang your flies. Something that's very difficult to do with a shorter rod because you're pulling your line up at a more oblique angle.
That was a lovely head and tail just there.
You see one? Look at that, there's fish there where these boys are casting.
18 feet out.
And it's just, you could literally spit a bit of chewing gum out your mouth and hit it on the head. So, what I'll do is I'll grab one of these other rods. Again, this is it's a less aggressive method, but it is on the most aggressive rod. Okay, buddy. So, this rod, this is the biggest rod that we've got in the range just now. This is the 10'7". So this is your ultimate reservoir rod. It'll throw everything. Floaters and big flies, floaters and teams of flies, up to your modern sort of heavy-headed, fast-sinking lines. It'll do the lot. And this particular line that I've got in here, this is a Rio Sync 3. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try if I can, I'm watching to see if anybody's catching. Luckily, nobody's catching.
I think they're both on the dry as well, I think. They've been persevering on the dry fly, but they've
because there is fish. But with this, with this setup, basically, it's a little bit heavier. The action's a little bit faster, and it needs to be faster to punch that line out. However, it has got a little bit of bend in here, and the good thing with a little bit of bend in the middle is when you're casting team of flies, it's all right when you're watching a professional caster and they're doing these tiny little loops and it's turning over great. They've usually got a tapered leader and a little bit of fluff in the end. Try doing that with 4 flies and a booby. You've got to struggle. So what it does is, it's got a bigger bend in the midsection, and what that does, it allows an open loop. And your open loop allows everything to turn over. And what we'll try and do is see if we can get as much of this out as I can, even though it's flat cam. And we've got to fish this fly back really, really slowly. And like I say, we're looking for the least aggressive method that I can. And by fishing it this way, it's probably going to take me 2 minutes to retrieve this fly. Jonathan, I've got 9 feet to a single fab there, barbless fab.
Yep.
Is that the right length, you think, for this depth of water? I'm looking to fish it about a foot, 2 foot below.
Once you've gone over the drop off, you'd be amazed at how deep it is. It
Honestly.
sort of drops off 12, 14.
Right.
And it is, throughout the whole of the lake, it's not much of a gradual drop off. It's a fairly aggressive drop off.
Perfect. Well, this is great for this line.
Yeah, but and of course once you'll find you get to that point
Cheeky.
when your fly's coming up onto the shelf, your fly line's here, but your fly's kind of
Even better.
already waiting on it. So
where's the shelf here? How far do I need to be casting?
It's about level with, so you're probably only about 5 feet past the drop off there, I would guess.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get the head of my line, which is usually the first 30 feet of fly line. I'm going to try and get the head of my line over that shelf and get everything down. And hopefully, I've not got a line tray with me, but hopefully with a little bit of open-handed casting, nice and gentle. Everybody, you see a lot of people casting and they're like, whoosh, whoosh, super aggressive. Jonathan, you're a casting instructor. everybody seems to want to hit the horizon every single time.
They do, and
it's turnover.
It's also a male trait. We all want to do it.
There you go.
The harder we wallop it, the better it goes, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. You can see there, I mean, that was just a slow, lazy cast. That's nearly the whole fly line out. And the reason I want to get out there is I want the head to go down on the shelf, and the plan is my line's got to come up the shelf, and my fly is just going to hover, 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 and then all of a sudden when that line, the weight of the line comes off, the fly is going to do that above the shelf. And quite often, it's a bit of a trigger. The fly's doing something different, it's moving in a different angle. I speak a lot when I'm fly fishing about angles. Jonathan, you've done a lot of boat fishing, you can see the difference. It is one guy's on the bow, one guy's on the stern. The fish catching ability of one on the stern, is usually a lot better than that on the pointy end. And it's angles, I'm convinced it's angles. So what I'm doing here is, I'm just letting everything get down. Because that's a die 3, it basically sinks at 3 inches a second. Most people will know that. So your lines sink at so many inches per second. And just say we've got 30 feet out there, 10 seconds, it's got to drop 30 feet. However, they're not the density compensation, there's a big sedge there, see?
Yeah, it's
is that an alder? Yeah, an alder.
They've just started the last couple of days.
And I've just had a little take there. Look, he's on it, he's on it, he's on it. I just started moving my line there and it went heavy. Two things could happen. The fish can come back, or I keep retrieving an RSL and it's solid because the flies actually the fishes took it on the drop. But the line just went heavy there for a second. That can only be a fish.
Yeah, I mean, as far as weeds gone, it's all died off over the winter.
Beautiful, this. What a venue. But as you can see, I talk about it a lot, the least aggressive method. And I can fish this and it'll take me a while to fish it back. I'm only got to probably fish it until the shelf and then maybe another 10 feet. And then my fly's up above the shelf then. And then we'll cast again. But the point of fishing a farb, so this is called a rocket farb. It's a mixture of a sunburst and an orange. And it sticks out literally like a sore thumb. They can't miss it in this clear water. They'd literally be swimming with a Labrador and a pair of glasses, you know. Yeah, I'm tempted.
We're just looking and there's another nice little small batch of cloud coming through.
So what I might do is I might come off this and we'll go back on, we've got to go back on that single dry. That suspender. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish this up the shelf first, just to see. Right, because the line's out, thank you Jonathan, I'm just going to put that there, hand on my line. You should never treat your rod like this folks, but we're trying to catch a fish for the camera. So let's get all this out of the way. And we can come back to that, but we've got a tiny little bit. Do you want a shot of that Jonathan, see what you think? It's an absolute joy. Just soft, you know, delicate. But I'm convinced the longer leader makes such a big difference.
I'm a massive fan of big leaders, long leaders, particularly on the rivers.
By the way, everybody, if Jonathan catches a fish, I'm going to walk that way and I probably won't come back, okay? You notice he waited until the cloud came out before he actually took the rod off my hands.
Well, I was actually going to go and get it for you, but you know.
It's nice now. We've probably got another 30 seconds of this, maybe a minute.
Now, do you like to fish your little shuttlecock like this? Would you like to fish it absolutely static, or do you like to give it a little tweak?
Do you know what? I fish it static. What you do get, and you get this a lot with shuttlecock flies, is you'll sometimes get the water flattening underneath it. So if fishes came to have a look, I then give it 6 inches and it'll pop and it shoots right back up. And that again can be a trigger as an emerging insect. But it's just a nice way to fish. I know I say this quite a lot. I think we're getting guilty of lazy fishing here in the UK. Most people that go out nowadays, they stick on a team of nymphs and a fab, and it's just lazy fishing. However, it's not the most effective method. There is more effective ways of catching fish.
So I think for a lot of younger anglers, you know, to get them into catching fish, the route they almost inevitably take is down the one of lures and sunk lines. Yeah. Whereas when I started, I didn't really have anyone to sort of show me the ropes when I first started. My father wasn't a fly fisherman.
Neither, no, I'm the same.
So it was kind of, you know, it was the dry fly, the nymph route, and then you went into the lures.
But then when we were younger, certainly when I was younger, I'm 50 now, it was a case of, that's okay, it's somebody else's phone, I did switch mine off. But when we were younger, most fishing started off in a river.
Yeah,
A river or a hill lock.
I very quickly was on a river.
Yeah.
I'd done a couple of bits of still water, and then
Yeah.
we got a chance on a bit of river. So
See, we never really had still waters when I was wee. That sort of came late 80s, the still water boom. We had your Avington and your Deaver and stuff down here, but in Scotland there was nothing.
No,
we had
no.
Loch Leven, and that was like your only real commercial fishery. Oh, and Loch Fitty was the other one.
that's our sun back again. Our clouds disappeared.
Isn't it typical?
Just a very, very brief window. But this also illustrates something that, you know, is being versatile to change.
Yeah.
And change quickly.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, it's enough time to get your fly out there and get a fish.
Yeah.
So being able to just quickly swap and, you know, having multiple rods makes life easy. But
Another
having a
good
bottle
point.
to do it.
Another good point worth saying on here is these reels. So these Stillmaniac reels are designed to go with the Stillmaniac rods, and the benefit with these are they're quick release spools. So basically, you can chop and change whatever line you want to
You
suit.
just simply
Yeah. So that's
twist
an
those,
anti-clockwise turn. Yeah.
pop it out.
And you can see there, it'll take a marker pen quite easily. But what I tend to do is whatever fly line I've got, I take the sticker off the box.
Yep.
But because I've been doing this for this show, these all went on last night. But yeah, they're just quick and fuss free. So much better than carrying all these different rods and reels. Because if you've got a long enough leader, you just reel your line in and change it at the reel seat.
Right, I'll let you switch back to the other method, Steve, and I'll...
Thanks, buddy. So I'm not making excuses, but it's worth pointing out it's flat calm, bright sun, late in the day, and we've had 2 days of fishing pressure. So we're going to go back to the, I think we'll go back to the die 3, and this time I'm going to see if I can get a whole line out there. And I'm just going to keep it on that shelf for as long as I can. And what we'll do is, we'll talk about different stuff still water fishing. Hopefully, Jonathan's got to pump me full of questions, and I'll hopefully be able to give you the answers regarding rods, lines, methods, etc. So this, we're back onto this die 3, and what I'll do is, because we've got a lot of stuff on the bank in here, I'm just got to make sure I can get a cast without getting a tangle. So what we'll do is we'll get the line out in the first instance, constantly watching the cloud. And what I do is I get everything to my left hand side, nothing near my feet, everything's on the left hand side. So we'll just get that, so we've got the full line out, and we'll do exactly the same again, a nice lazy cast. We didn't need to be aggressive with the casting. This rod will do the casting for you. And we'll just leave that there. We'll give it time to sink, and while it's sinking, Jonathan, give me some patter.
So, I mean, obviously this is the first time you've been here, Steve, so...
No, I've fished here before, but I fished it before it was actually a fishery. So this is when it was somebody else had it, and I fished this lake up in that top corner with dries again, and I fished the other lake. And the fish that we caught were phenomenal, just such good fish. But yeah, so I've been here before, but fishing wise, maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, it's changed a lot since then, obviously, since we took over. Dare I say, the fishery's managed properly now, so it means that we want anglers to catch fish.
Definitely.
You know, it's not a case of just having a lake and getting people to pay their money and not catch anything and go home. We want you to catch fish and come back again. So it's a nice healthy mix of fish as well. There's, you know, good browns in there as well. We have put them in at up to close to 20 pounds in the past.
Well, we just spoke to
There we go.
There you go. So that was on the drop, and basically what I've done is I've got it on the shelf. And we just spoke there, when Jonathan was speaking, there was a guy had one maybe half an hour before we started, £15. So that's a bit special. And the good thing with this method is 9 times out of 10, they're hooked in the top lip, very similar to fishing buzzers. And because it's a single barbless hook, we can get that out and get the fish back really quickly. But you can see the whole rod coming into play, even at a heavy rod, 10'7".
Still bending all the way through.
And it's still got that action. You're totally in control with the fish.
And your point breaking strain on here, Steve?
So this one's only 7.
Okay.
Because, and to be fair, Jonathan, that's another point actually worth making. A lot of people rock up at Stillwater and stick heavy, we call it twang up north. They stick heavy twang on. It's crystal clear water. So I went for a 7-pound Fluoroflex. It's got quite a thin diameter. It's a new stuff, so it's got a thinner diameter.
Yep.
But I wouldn't go too thick. And we've just got to get him in the net.
See, because we do quite a lot of catch and release, which is a rarity for the south. You know, we say ordinarily for here it's sort of a minimum £6 breaking strain, but a lot of our regulars do fish 8,
Heavy.
9.
Yeah.
But that's because they want to get him in quick and get him back.
That's right.
You know, it's
That's what I'm going to show people a quick trick when you're netting fish.
of how to properly release them.
Yeah,
as well.
how to get them in the net quick and how to release them. So once this fish's head up, as soon as his head comes out of the water, I'm going to pull him in one movement. So once his head's up like that, in one movement, I'm going to keep them coming all the time. Once their head's out of the water, they can't get any purchase. Unless it's a big fish, of course. Now, because this is a barbless hook, this will fall out really easily. I'm just going to quickly show you the fish.
And important there that Steve did wet his hands first.
Yeah,
you see.
always wet your hands first. And I don't want to grip this thing too hard. But there he is. A lovely fish for Haywards Farm. Not very nice on that gill there, but the other side's immaculate. I just can't turn him. And I'll just quickly get the hook out. And another thing boys need to be aware of, see these mesh nets for fish spinning. I'm just going to wet my other hand, because this hook's, he's took that, and I say it's normally in the top lip, it's because it's went round his maxillary there. He's hooked in the corner of the mouth. Comes out nice and easy, and then we just got to get him back in the crystal clear. Look at that water.
Oh, happy and away to go.
Jesus, that water is so clear.
I can still see him.
So that was pretty much instant. What we did is we put a full line out, we were covering the shelf, and believe it or not, that fish, you could see me, when I was speaking to Jonathan, my hands were hardly moving, but I was constantly in contact. That fish has took it on the drop. The fly line hasn't been on the bottom, because it would have hooked itself. It's pulling against the whole fly line. When you've got a sinking line and a fish takes, imagine a carp fisher's bolt rig. So you've got a big bit of lead there and you've got a hook. As soon as that carp takes, it pulls against the bolt rig and hooks itself. Similar can be said with a sinking line. The heavier the sinking line, the more density it has. The larger the density, or the heavier the density, sorry, the more the fish has got to pull against. And it acts like a bolt rig. That's why a lot of competition anglers fish with sinking lines. If you've got a full sinking line and you're fishing 12 feet deep, and a fish takes, it's got to pull 30 yards of a sinking line and your fly. It's getting hooked every time.
Right.
Every single time. Another point worth mentioning with that is, when I was figuring it ever so slow, my rod was rattling. A little, not my rod, but I could feel it in my hand rattling. And quite often when you're fishing, I call it a static presentation fly, even though I was moving it ever so slowly. It's a static fly, and I use specific hooks for static flies that work better than pulling hooks. And with a static fly, what you tend to get is the fish will come up, you'll either lock and away, or you'll get a rattle. Especially with fabs and especially with boobies, you get rattles. You just keep everything coming. Didn't strike, didn't do anything. Keep coming till it locks up. And he's seen how that locked up. It's just like bang.
It was solid. That's been absolutely brilliant. You know,
That was good, that wasn't it?
We've persevered with the dry.
Yeah.
Obviously the sun's not been great for us.
I don't think we cast more than 3 times with the dry.
But you know, we've only had what 3 casts with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Just goes to show, you know, nice and slow.
Yes.
And really important to show people how we want to get those fish back in the water. You know, land them nice and quickly, get your hands wet, don't take that protective sign off the side of the fish, unhook it with a barbless hook, comes out very, very easily, hold that fish till it's ready to go, and that one was ready to go straight away. But that's been absolutely brilliant, Steve. Really,
Super.
thanks ever so much for coming down.
And we caught one.
We did.
It's a
we
bonus.
did. The rods have been fantastic. I'm really impressed with the 9'9" 6 weight. I think
Lovely.
I might have to add one of those, and also the cassette reel. I've already got a cassette reel, but I think if I'm looking for another one, I do like the look of those. And it's a nice super large arbor, which particularly for
One
keeping
caveat,
them memory
Jonathan.
down.
It's really good for keeping memory down, but the other caveat is we never got a chance to use it because it was so calm. We've got the 9'9" for a 7 as well, which is a really good bank rod. But today, it was a choice of 2 methods: single dry, or keep that fly out there as long as possible. There's least disturbance as we possibly could.
And we've done a great job. Thanks ever so much, Steve. Just
Pleasure.
proving that you know, being able to ring the changes depending on the conditions brings you fish, and brings you fish pretty quickly. So that's the end of this live stream. More to come. Stay tuned, and we'll see you soon.